Massive McAfee and Hawk sports talk today. Can't thank you enough for watching. I am Pat McAfee. This is Larry Legend on my shirt. You cannot buy the shirt because we got cease and desisted by said man that's on my shirt. Sitting to my left, and the man that'll intro our guest, who's best friends with our guest, AJ Hawk.
Yeah, boy, AJ! Yeah, AJ! Woo!
Yes, thanks for the great intro, Pat. Let's not waste any more time. Let's bring on our first guest of the day, the great Dr. Drew Pinsky. Drew, I'm not going to let these guys clap. They're trying to clap for you, but I know you got a tight schedule, Dr. Drew. I guess, where are you right now from the start of when all of the pandemic kind of crept into America until now? Like, how has it changed?
How has my opinion changed?
Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to stay optimistic the entire time. I would say the main thing I think that's changed on is the sort of the ferocity of this illness. The fact that it's able to, really cause a crash all of a sudden out of the blue, even in young people. And that's a feature of this illness that I wasn't aware of until it sort of landed here stateside. I'm still optimistic. I still believe no one's more innovative and responsive than the U.S. healthcare system. I believe we're going to start knocking down the hospitalization rate, the death rate, the infectivity. I'm still optimistic. And if being optimistic is something that makes people angry, I'm sorry. But I'm still very optimistic in spite of the fact that I'm, completely signed up. From the beginning, I've also been saying follow Dr. Fauci. Whatever he says, that's what we got to do. And he thinks we need to be very aggressive, so that's what we will be.
Hey, Doc, I think it's good that you're optimistic, by the way, and I appreciate everything you've done through my childhood as being a voice of reason from the doctor's standpoint on the television. So I want to first get that out there.
I appreciate it, but let me say to that, yeah, the reason I got on the radio in 1983 is because I was part of the army that Dr. Fauci put together back then. Whoa. I was working on the front lines of the AIDS epidemic, and we were chanting about 10 million deaths, 10 million deaths. There's going to be millions of dead if we don't, talk to educate people about this illness and how it's transmitted. Now, we were off by a factor of 100 in terms of our predictions then, and we congratulated ourselves for scaring the hell out of a generation and hopefully change their behavior. But really what changed the course of that illness was therapeutics. The fact that we came up with effective treatments that turned AIDS from a death sentence, which is what I was dealing with in my training and early career, to a chronic illness. And I think we're going to get the same thing here. I just have great faith in our innovation in U.S. healthcare.
Okay, well, excellent. I'm happy that Dr. Fauci enlisted you into his army to battle the AIDS. Is that the most relative comparison you can make for this COVID-19 shutdown reaction quarantine is to the AIDS epidemic? Or is there anything in the history of existence that's been like this?
Well, we've never done anything like this, right? Where an entire world shuts down intentionally. That's the part that's extraordinary. We've had pandemics. I mean, we had one in 2009, the H1N1. That virus infected 1 billion people and killed 500,000, mostly 40 to 60-year-olds. And you guys barely know that happened. So the extraordinary thing is not that we have another pandemic, although this is a bad one. It's our response to it and the aggression with which we're approaching it. That's the uncanny part.
Dr. Drew, what about like the mainstream media? And I've heard you mention sometimes like you don't like the panic that they can create at times. How would you like them to handle it?
I would like them to shut up. That's what I've been saying from the beginning.
Me too.
And I'm remembering now back at the very beginning what got me sort of mobilized. I was sitting in a local Fox affiliate in New York City, and there was a reporter in Italy going, "We have a staggering number of cases. Staggering. We have 7,000 cases." And I thought, oh, my God, you need to shut up because this is going to go way higher. And what are we going to call a million? Because, and I would say, like, look, we have 24 million flu cases in this country every year, 30,000 deaths. What do you call those numbers? And this is going to be comparable or worse or who knows. So shut up because you're only going to panic people. And they ensued and are continuing to spin this thing in ways that I think are disturbing. I mean, we should really pat ourselves on the back for the colossal effort and the sacrifices and the fact that we're affecting the curve. We're slowing it down the way we intended. We're not going to exceed our resources. Good. We should be congratulating ourselves, not whipping up further panic and chaos. That's the part I've been upset about. My opinion has changed multiple times on where we are, how this is going. I mean, it's hard to predict, right? It's impossible. I just hope right now that we get some good therapeutics and change the curve for hospitalization and death rate. I have faith that's going to happen. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. What is it? Is it? Are we angry with people for trying to be optimistic in this country? It's crazy.
Well, to your point, Dr. Drew, and it came out yesterday that UPMC might have found a vaccine. I mean, there's probably a lot of trials and things that have to go through, but the world is coming together. And to your point about the media, just trying to make everybody look bad and feel bad and sensationalize everything. This morning, I had a sports talk show where we were talking about Amari Cooper and Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. And we clipped it, we put on Twitter. It was quote tweeted by a guy named Kevin McGran, who is a Canadian media member. And he wrote, "I love that the NFL coverage is basically totally oblivious to COVID-19. If the NFL is forced to delay the start of the season, then maybe more Americans will wake up to this pandemic." What life is this guy? My whole family is in quarantine right now. The conversation that America isn't taking this serious, I think that's one that is just not accurate at all. Am I wrong because of those drunk kids at the beach? Yeah, am I wrong?
Yeah, but that is wrong-headed. I'm tempted to call him a name, but
I did.
Look, but here's the deal: can we have some entertainment and relief? Can we talk about something and not have somebody virtue signal us? This virtue signaling is what's making me furious. Whoever can be the most restrictive, whoever can be the most outraged that we're not taking this enough seriously. We are locked in our homes, for crying out loud. We are taking, and by the way, again, should be proud of ourselves. Collectively, we've taken this on. Collectively, we're together and doing this and following our leaders. I think some of this is excessive, but that's okay. I'm going to follow what our leaders tell us, and that's that. And we all are doing the same, and we should be proud of that and not be virtue signaling that there's somebody who could be more restrictive than the other person. It's beyond crazy. I hope people see what that is for what it is.
Now, I know you worked with Dr. Fauci and the AIDS epidemic, and you guys did a lot of great work there. I guess, what do you think separates him? What makes him so special? He seems so professional. He seems just so buttoned up, and he says all the right things, just presents the facts when he's briefing everybody during these press briefings. What makes him so special?
Well, he's the perfect combination of clinician, right? He takes care of patients, so he has a sensibility about how these things work in a clinical setting, and he's a consummate scientist. So what he always says is I'm not a scientist, I'm a clinician, so I'll speculate a little bit. Like, this feels like this to me. This feels it feels like a certain thing to me. But Fauci always falls back on, I have to see the data. The data will tell. I can't say anything till I see the data. Like, for instance, there's a lot of enthusiasm amongst clinicians about hydroxychloroquine, and to be fair, whenever a new therapeutic mechanism comes in, there's sort of always an excessive enthusiasm. We kind of overestimate its potential to be positive, and I'm sure we're doing that again now. And Fauci, rather than taking any opinion whatsoever, just says, when I see the data, I'll tell you when we got the data. And we should have some data, I'm hoping, next week when they open up some of these studies and let us know, is the chloroquine changing the course of this thing the way we think it might?
Was that the end of the sentence, or did he cut out right there? Are you still there, Dr. Drew?
I'm here. Did I lose you?
Oh, okay, great news.
I'm worried about.
No worries. So whenever you get it, that thing you just talked about with the Z-Pack, and then this thing from UPMC, how long should people be expecting for these to get the okay through the trials? Because I've been told that that's a pretty long, sustaining thing. Is that going to get cut down because of the pandemic, because of the situation we're in? Like, if that UPMC thing, it worked in mice, if it shows that it will work in humans, how long does that have to be tested before it can get put into action?
Yeah, there are 3 good vaccines out there apparently, and they're well into clinical trials. The most optimistic report I've heard that may or may not be accurate was that there'll be something available for healthcare providers maybe in the late fall, early 2021, and that the more general application would be the following fall. That's about as optimistic as it gets. But in terms of therapeutics, again, that's vaccine. In terms of treatments, the FDA has approved hydroxychloroquine. There's tons of studies that are coming in that look from other countries that look really quite good. And there are antiviral combinations being tried all the time. Again, I'm hoping we start to see that data in the next week or so. So once that initial data comes in, it may be a little while before there's formal sort of endorsement for it, but believe me, clinicians will start to apply it.
Dr. Drew, if we want to apply this to sports, like a lot of people want to know when and if like sports come back. I guess whenever the sports do come back, and we don't know right now, everyone's guessing. I guess what does that look like? Is it going to be gradual where you were taking everyone's temperature right away? Are there going to be fans in the stands? What is it?
Oh yeah.
It'd be weird, right, if they tried doing it without anybody in the stands. That's like uncanny. I can't imagine that happening, but I guess that's one stage it could happen. And to be fair, look, the athletes can infect each other too, so that has to be dealt with as well. Just look at the NBA. That's the prime example of that. I think generally, I've said for quite some time that shutting everything off is easier than turning things back on without causing another little outbreak of this virus. And how they're going to do that, I suspect they're going to start talking about next week. It's going to require a lot more testing, and it's going to be, we're going to need more information about the therapeutics to try to predict, what the risks are worth, right? Is it worth it, this risk versus that risk? And then when we test, we're going to find out who's got it, who's not had it, who had it, and then start to use some sort of novel technology. Dr. Birx is the person to look out to for that. Deborah Birx, she's the woman that gets up with Fauci, and she does this kind of monitoring in Africa with AIDS patients. And she the other day said, look, I've done this in third world countries. I can certainly do it here. And so I'm certain she's working on a plan for that now. But exactly what that's going to look like and how that's going to phase in, it is really hard to figure that out.
They say that it takes 21 days to create a new habit or something like that. If people if people are being locked up in their houses for 30 to 60 days, what is the world going to look like on the other side of this? Do you think we're going to have a potential change of the way humans interact with other humans? And how long do you think that rollout process from a mental standpoint, psychological standpoint, is going to happen before we get back to what we thought was going to happen or what was happening before this entire thing took off?
Yeah, these are really interesting and great questions, and we don't know, right? I mean, maybe the handshake is gone except in extraordinary circumstances, or if you're near a bathroom where you can go wash your hands immediately, or maybe people will be doing much more on the telephone or through the internet, through Zoom and conferencing. Maybe work will be more from home. Maybe we'll be afraid to go into crowds. Maybe, who knows, will sales be down in tickets to professional events, or will people sort of become complacent and head back towards their normal behavior? Usually people head back towards complacency. I mean, they head, but I think a lot of stuff will have changed permanently. And the one thing that I find, well, I'm not permanently, at least for the time being, but the one thing that's kind of interesting to me is if you notice that if you walk by somebody, normally in a crisis, people are drawn to one another. Now, you notice people, like, they recoil, like everybody's a potential infecting agent. So people pull away from one another. And that's a very strange behavior. And I think that's going to be with us for a while because, until we get the vaccine, people are going to have to do social distancing of some type to kind of protect themselves. So it's, and what do we, I hope we start to have, more detailed conversations about our end of life's plan. I mean, what if, let's say when you're 75 years old and a new virus comes along, do you want to be on a ventilator? Have you thought about these things? And there's just so many areas that it's going to be affected. And the other thing that really worries me is we've blown up millions of jobs and millions of businesses. And if this keeps decaying, I mean, what are those people going to do? Exactly how's that going to work? That kind of frightens me. So they need to kind of get things going sooner than later.
What kind of impact mentally do you think this will have on young kids? Like, I have 4 young kids, and now obviously we're doing the homeschooling and all of that. And my 2 oldest are old enough to know what's going on for sure. Like, how do you think it's going to affect them mentally going forward as they grow up when they had this kind of traumatic experience where their whole life was kind of changed? Is it going to change how kids and people interact in the future?
It will. They'll remember how they feel. It's some really interesting stuff is coming up, like even in my own family. Our kids are sort of having their millennial age. That we have 27-year-old triplets. And they're, they're virtue signaling and they're doing all the things that millennials do. And the other day, my wife and I looked at each other and we said, our parents were World War II, her father was a World War II veteran. All four of them were deeply affected by the Depression, and they prepared us for this. That was they were constantly beating us up, and we are sort of ultimately prepared for exactly these kinds of crises from what our parents hammered into our head. And so we had to point that out to this younger generation. And I'm wondering if the really young ones will be sort of similar to the Depression era, and like they'll be constantly worried about a catastrophe. Certainly that was hammered into us by the generation that preceded myself and my wife. And it's prepared us. We're like completely prepared for catastrophes. I'm wondering if your little kids will be a similar generation.
That's so interesting to think about, because your moments, right, Carrie? I still remember exactly where I was when September 11th happened, right?
Me too.
I remember exactly where I was. I'll remember this forever. I couldn't even fathom being in high school or something, having your entire spring semester basically canceled. There's a lot of people. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are asking this question that I'm about to ask you, and it's in our YouTube comment section pretty heavily right now. And I think it's been talked about a couple times, but I'm not 100% sure if anybody knows the answer. The second wave of this, if somebody gets COVID-19, does their body build up antibodies to fight off COVID-19 again, like maybe chicken pox or something along those lines? Or is this more like the flu, where you can get it and get it again, and this thing could remain in our culture for a long time?
Right. So COVID-19 is a very stable virus, unlike the flu, which drifts year to year. So even when you've seen the flu one year, it changes its genetic construct such that the following year it can get you again, which is why we chase it with vaccines. It's also why we don't hit the bullseye every year with the vaccine. With the coronavirus, we think that you have probably at least a year of immunity for sure, and maybe something more sustained. And by the time your immunity wears, we will have a vaccine. And that vaccine, again, will be stable because the virus is stable. So once we get the vaccine, we will have the solution to this thing. This virus, the flu, its niche in the ecology of life for the flu is to drift and kind of stay alive in the human genome, as long as it possibly can. This coronavirus is to take over and replicate itself massively, and just get it all done up front. But that's a good thing for us in terms of vaccines. The other thing is about recurrences versus reinfections. You will hear stories out in the press of people getting sick a second time. It appears that's a recurrence and not a reinfection. So some people will have a sort of a second illness, and those are people that didn't completely clear the virus in the first place. Now, we don't really know a lot about the immunity yet. These are all presumptions, so people should be careful even if they've had it. But they're probably in good shape, and probably that will be part of the rollout when people get back to work. People who are immune can go about their business.
Last thing for me, Dr. Drew. I know a guy that had it, and he's recovered. He got tested, I think, 18 days ago. He said he was 14 days of hell. He was at home, couldn't breathe, bad fever, all this stuff, and now he feels a lot better. He's getting his lungs back. Is there anything he can do? But since he's kind of come through it, can he donate plasma? What can he do to help?
Well, that's a really great question. He could do that. Some places they are using convalescent plasma to help people who are really in bad shape. So he might want to check with, it's so hard to figure out where to go right now because it's such a tapestry. Where are they doing those kinds of interventions? You would have to do some legwork, probably call a university or a hospital and say, are they doing anything like that? Would they like any help with that? It's not like an easy putt, like you can call the Red Cross or something. So I'm delighted that he's interested in helping other people, and I would say that's a great impulse. Please look into that.
Dr. Drew, we can't thank you enough for your time. We know you're a busy man. I don't know what you were going to call that guy from Canada that came after me earlier, but if you would like to say that right now, you could for sure.
No, I'm trying to stay positive on all fronts. I'll leave you to those words.
Well, hey, we appreciate the hell out of you. I feel like I learned a lot here today. Good luck with your everything. Stay safe, and we appreciate you.
Good guys, thanks. Great to talk to you.
You too, Dr. Drew.
Hey, doctor!
Okay, AJ. Good booking there, AJ. I thought I was going to hate the guy. I thought he was very smart, very good, and said, hey, if they hate me for being an optimist, They can hate me then. I'm going to stay positive through this whole thing. That was very interesting to talk to a guy that was definitely smarter than both of us combined.
Yeah, it was funny that I heard him on somebody else's podcast talk about his kids virtue signaling and talking about all this stuff. And Dr. Drew was like, hey, if you want to help, stop talking. Why don't you go do something? And he said, I think Dr. Drew explained to them that he kind of put his name in as like an emergency doctor that could come in and help with trauma patients at hospitals. He's like, I'm putting myself out there. If they need me, I'm available. Why don't you guys try to figure out how you can help? Like, he was talking about how he's getting kind of frustrated with his kids. So it was interesting to see.
That guy coming after me from Canada is one of the biggest pieces of shit I've ever seen.
Can we pop the tweet back up there?
Yeah, this is my answer, obviously. But how good did he feel putting that out? You know, like while he was typing that up, he was like, here we go. I'm a hero. I'm going to be the one that calls out why people are contracting the coronavirus in America. And sometimes it's the easiest tweet that is really the most effective. And me telling him just to shut the fuck up seems to be a real crowd pleaser. And to be honest, I couldn't wait to fire that thing off. That thing, there was no filter. There was no trigger pull. That thing was typed and sent before it was like an AR-15 as soon as I saw it. And by the way, I chose to quote tweet him so others would help me saying that, as opposed to just responding to him. That is a decision that I have to make on a regular occasion whenever there's buffoons and bums that are tweeting me. I chose to quote tweet that just so everybody who might be bored and locked in their house with nothing else to do but potentially laugh at the clown and the monkeys that are on the internet and on the television, I thought maybe they can get involved and pile on this fat stooge from Canada alongside me.
Okay, so what gives him the impression that people aren't taking it serious? Because we saw a video a week ago of some young kids that are 18, 19 on the beach in spring break. Like, that's giving everybody a bad name. I feel like, at least in the circles I've been around, like, people are taking it very serious. All sports in the world are canceled except for wrestling, and WrestleMania is going to happen in a studio with no fans. Like, there's never been a time like where this has happened. I feel like when the NBA canceled the rest of its season, I feel like right then everyone's like, oh, okay, there's billions and billions of dollars down the tube. Like, with all of these sports canceled, with everything going on, I feel like people are taking it somewhat serious.
There's always going to be humans that are outliers, right? I mean, that's going to happen. There's still people on beaches right now, I'd assume. But I think a large majority of the humans in America, just like a large majority of the humans in the rest of the world, would like this to end sooner than later, so we're buying in. I mean, the fact that literally my entire life has been my house, this office, my house, this office, my house, this office. My parents have been married for 75 years. They're together all day, every day right now. My parents are battling in the house right now. I get a phone call from my mom. I call my mom and dad once a night just to see how it's going over there. I feel like Americans are doing their part. So I didn't like that guy came after our country. I didn't like that he came after me. And as soon as I looked at a picture, he had a weak chin, okay, no cakes, and he definitely walked duck-footed, and I want to put my foot in his fucking face. I hate that guy. I was not happy about it. I've been working.
He hasn't responded. He hasn't responded to your tweet yet, because I am sure he's getting piled on from plenty of your fans.
Yeah, he obviously backpedaled like a little bitch that he is. I mean, he's just a little punk ass, that guy. I've been working my ass off, I feel like, as an attempt to dance monkey dance and hopefully distract people. And this guy not only does an elbow drop from Canada on me, but also America. Get the hell out of here, pal. Hey, get the hell out of here, pal.